The moment Malcolm leaned into the microphone and said, "Your Honor, we are finally shutting down her embarrassing little business," something inside me snapped so hard, I swear the whole courtroom felt it. My palms were sweating, my jaw locked tight, but I didn't move. Not when Malcolm flashed that smug smile. Not when Mama nodded proudly behind him. Not even when Daddy crossed his arms like this was the family victory he'd been waiting years to celebrate. I just kept staring at Malcolm, my big brother, my childhood protector turned adult saboteur, as he tried to bury me with a lie so bold it made the walls feel too small. He stood there acting like he built something, like he had any right to speak on what I'd spent years sacrificing for. But what stunned me most wasn't his voice, or the fabricated $2 million loan he claimed I owed him, or even the fake documents he slid across the table with that arrogant flick of his wrist. It was the way my own parents watched him do it, the way they approved. Daddy actually smiled. Mama clasped her hands like she was in church getting blessed. I felt their judgment thick in the air, that familiar mix of disappointment and superiority. They'd been waiting for the day I stumbled, and they came dressed for the occasion. But then Judge Holloway froze. It happened so abruptly, the courtroom rustled with whispers. Her glasses slid down her nose as she squinted at the case file, then back at me, then at Malcolm. "Miss Carter, is your company Apex Defense Systems?" she asked slowly. I swallowed, my throat tight. "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Holloway tapped her pen against the folder. "The same Apex Defense Systems featured in the Wall Street Journal 3 days ago for winning a $189 million Department of Defense cybersecurity contract?" The air shifted so sharply, even Malcolm's confidence stuttered. Daddy sat back like somebody had unplugged him. Mama let out this tiny gasp, the kind usually reserved for gossip she didn't want anyone to know she enjoyed. But Malcolm? Oh, Malcolm went still. His smirk died right there. He tried to recover, clearing his throat, adjusting his suit jacket like he still had control. Well, that article, we believe it exaggerated. Judge Holloway raised her hand. "Mr. Carter, unless you are suggesting a major federal contract was misreported by the Wall Street Journal, I advise you to stop talking." The courtroom went silent. So silent, I could hear my own heartbeat thudding through the tension. Judge Holloway leaned forward, her voice cold as stone. "Mr. Carter, I am referring this matter to federal investigators. Attempting to interfere with the United States military contractor is not only fraudulent, it carries national security implications." Gasps rippled. Someone dropped a pen. Malcolm's knees visibly buckled, and I looked at my family, really looked at them, as the truth unraveled their pride right in front of me. They didn't come to support me. They didn't come for justice. They came to watch me fall. But they had no idea the floor they prayed for me to hit was about to open beneath them. When Judge Holloway announced the recess to prepare her written dismissal, Malcolm sank into his chair like a balloon losing air. His lawyer whispered frantically, flipping through papers that weren't worth the ink printed on them. Daddy kept muttering, "This can't be happening," under his breath, while Mama dabbed her eyes as if she were the victim here. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight on my chest start to lift, but only slightly. Because even though the courtroom had turned in my favor, I knew my family. I knew they weren't done humiliating themselves, or trying to humiliate me. Miss Rivera touched my arm. "We're fine. You handled yourself beautifully." But my hands were trembling, not from fear, that had burned out a long time ago, but from an old frustration rising through my bones, the kind that came from being underestimated by decades by the very people who were supposed to uphold you. "Let's wait in the hallway," she murmured. The second we stepped outside, Malcolm followed, practically tripping over his own guilt and entitlement. "Danny, wait,"
he hissed. You didn't have to blindside everybody like that. I turned slowly. Blindside? You hid your company under your married name. You knew we wouldn't connect the dots. That was sneaky. I blinked. Actually blinked. Are you serious right now? Miss Rivera intervened. Mr. Carter, I advise you not to speak to my client. But Malcolm wasn't listening. He had that frantic, scrambling energy of someone who knows the ground is disappearing beneath them, but is still trying to outrun the fall. You made us look stupid, he snapped. You couldn't tell us you had a federal contract? Mom and Dad are humiliated. My laugh came out sharp. Humiliated by what? My success? Or by the fact that your little scheme just detonated in your face? Malcolm's jaw clenched. It wasn't a scheme. It was fraud, and a very sloppy one. Before he could respond, Daddy marched toward me, his face red, his eyes cold. He pointed at me like I was a misbehaving employee instead of his daughter. Danielle, you listen to me, he barked. This contract, this company, all this, he gestured wildly. You think it makes you better than us? I stared at him. No, you think it makes me better than you. Daddy froze. His mouth opened, closed, then tightened. That hit too close to home. Mama stepped in with that dramatic sigh she always used when she wanted to look wounded. We didn't want this to happen. Malcolm, he just got excited. We didn't know it would go this far. There it was, the Carter family brand of accountability. Rewrite the story until they're the victims. I felt something inside me crack. Not pain this time, but clarity. Y'all didn't care how far it went. You cared how far I went. Mama's lips trembled. You're twisting things. No, I'm finally seeing them straight. Their faces shifted. Guilt, denial, offense, all swimming together. Malcolm looked like he might throw up. Daddy looked like he wanted to shake me. Mama looked like she wanted someone else to fix this for her. But then her tone switched, soft, pleading, rehearsed. Baby, we were worried about you. You were always different, always off doing your own thing. We just wanted you to be realistic. Realistic, that word. The one they'd used to clip my wings for years. I inhaled deeply. I was realistic. That's why I worked 80-hour weeks. That's why I coded until I saw double. That's why I survived broke nights when neither of you lifted a finger to help. Daddy's voice rose. We didn't know you needed help. You knew. You just didn't take me seriously. His mouth snapped shut. And finally, I let the truth pour out. Y'all never thought I'd succeed. You never thought I'd rise above the box you put me in. So you decided to drag me back down the moment you thought I was climbing too high. That landed hard. Malcolm's eyes darted around like he expected cameras to pop out. Danny, stop talking like this. You sound crazy. No, I sound free. Miss Rivera touched my elbow again. We're fine. We don't need to continue this. But Malcolm stepped forward with that last gasp of desperation. Danny, please, don't let them take this to federal court. Don't let me get charged. His voice shook. Dad's already talking to a lawyer. They're saying prison time is... He cut himself off. Too late. I stared. Prison time is what? His eyes glossed with panic. They said it's possible. Mama let out a strangled sob. Daddy looked away, jaw tight. There it was. The truth they didn't want me to know. They'd already been warned. They were already scared. And instead of apologizing, instead of admitting they'd nearly destroyed my life, they wanted me to save him. My voice came out steady. Malcolm, I didn't put you in that courtroom. I didn't forge those documents. I didn't weaponize bankruptcy court. You did. He swallowed hard. Daddy stepped closer. Your family needs you. Don't turn your back now. I met his eyes. You turned your back 8 years ago. Silence. Thick and dense. Miss Rivera nodded toward the courtroom door. Judge is calling everyone back. As we walked away, I didn't look back. Not at Malcolm. Not at Mama. Not at Daddy. because somewhere deep in my spirit, I knew this wasn't the end. I knew when we stepped back into that courtroom, something even bigger was coming.
When we returned to the courtroom, the temperature felt different, colder, heavier, like the walls themselves were bracing for impact. Judge Holloway sat poised at the bench, her expression unreadable but sharp enough to cut through steel. Malcolm slid into his seat with the deflated posture of a man waiting on a sentence he never imagined would be his. Ms. Rivera whispered, "Stay calm. She's about to make this official." I nodded, though every emotion inside me was a storm. Anger, hurt, disbelief, and something else I couldn't fully name yet. Maybe relief. Maybe release. When the judge finally spoke, her voice echoed like a hammer against everything the Carters came in here to accomplish. After reviewing documentation from both parties, this court finds substantial evidence of intentional fraud committed by the petitioner, Mr. Malcolm Carter. Mama's cry echoed off the wooden panels. Daddy stiffened like someone had grabbed him by the spine. Malcolm's breathing turned shallow. Judge Holloway continued, each word deliberate and punishing. There is no record of a legitimate loan between siblings. Furthermore, the documents submitted by Mr. Carter were not only recently created, forensic analysis confirms intentional manipulation. This court has no choice but to dismiss the bankruptcy petition in its entirety. Dismissed. With finality, with clarity, with no room left for the Carters to twist the truth. But the judge wasn't done. She clasped her hands, leaning slightly forward. Given Ms. Santos's role as CEO of a defense contractor working under the Department of Defense, Mr. Carter's attempt to sabotage her company presents potential national security concerns. A ripple of shock spread across the room. Malcolm's mouth dropped open. "I am referring this matter to federal authorities," the judge said. "They will determine whether criminal charges should be pursued." Mama whispered, "Dear God." Daddy muttered, "This judge is overreacting." But Judge Holloway heard him. Her eyes snapped to ours. This court does not take lightly the interference with federal defense operations, nor should any citizen. Even Daddy went silent. My chest felt tight, not from fear. No, fear had long since burned out, but from disbelief that I was living this moment in real time. For years, I had walked around with the quiet ache of being dismissed by the people who were supposed to love me. They told me I was dramatic, sensitive, delusional, dreaming too big. But here I was standing in a courtroom where the truth finally, loudly, publicly was on my side. When the judge adjourned, the gavel sounded like a ceremonial break between my past and my future. Ms. Rivera turned to me. "It's over." I exhaled slowly. "No, it's just beginning." We stepped into the hallway again, but this time the energy was different. Reporters had gathered, not because of me, but because some clerk had clearly tipped them off that a fraud referral involving a DoD contractor had just gone down. They swarmed before Mama could catch her breath. "Miss Santos, is it true your brother attempted to falsify financial documents? Did your family know about your contract with the Department of Defense? Are you pressing charges?" My voice stayed calm. "I cannot comment on an active referral." But behind the cameras, my family stood in total disarray. Daddy was sweating through his shirt. Mama was fanning herself like she might faint. And Malcolm, he looked like a man unraveling by the minute, his eyes darting back and forth as if there was still a way out. As soon as the reporters backed off, Daddy grabbed my arm. Hard. Harder than he ever had when I was a kid. "You're going to fix this," he hissed. Ms. Rivera stepped between us so fast, Daddy flinched. "Remove your hand from my client." He dropped it, but the fury stayed. "Danielle, this is family business." "No, family business doesn't include federal fraud." His nostrils flared. "You're really going to destroy your own brother over some little company?" I let that sink in. 8 years. 50 employees, millions in revenue, $189 million contract, and Daddy still couldn't call Apex anything more than some little company. Say it, I murmured. Say what you really think of me. Daddy's jaw tightened. You were never supposed to outshine him. There it was. The truth he never said out loud. The truth Malcolm had always sensed. The truth Mama had always protected. Your place, Daddy continued, was supposed to be behind him? I finished. He blinked at the accuracy. Mama caught up then, stepping between us with trembling lips. Baby, this isn't the time. No, I said quietly. It's exactly the time. My voice didn't rise. I didn't shake. I didn't break. I built something you didn't understand, so you dismissed it. I succeeded in ways you didn't expect, so you tried to erase it. And when you saw a rumor of my success, instead of being proud, you weaponized it. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of them. Not anymore. I spent my whole life trying to prove I was enough. Turns out the problem was never me. Mama's lower lip quivered. We just didn't know how big your company was. And that makes the betrayal worse, because the smaller you thought my life was, the easier you found it to crush. Malcolm finally broke his silence. His voice was quiet. Danny, don't let them take me to prison. I turned to him. I'm not taking you anywhere. You walked yourself into that courtroom. He looked like a child again, not the brother who used to carry me on his back, but the boy who grew jealous of every inch of independence I ever showed. Ms. Rivera touched my shoulder. We should go. And something inside me, some last sliver of loyalty, some last fragment of hope, snapped clean. I'm done, I said. Mama gasped. Daddy scowled. Malcolm's eyes widened with fear. I shook my head slowly. We're strangers from this moment forward. The hallway fell silent, heavy, hollow, final. I walked away without looking back. But the second we stepped outside into the crisp December air, my phone buzzed with a message from our head of operations. Danielle, call me ASAP. Something's happening at the office. It's urgent. I froze on the courthouse steps, because as of the week I'd had, after everything my family had tried, I knew the next blow was coming from somewhere I never expected. The moment I saw the words, "It's urgent," glowing on my screen, something cold slid down my spine. I hadn't even reached the sidewalk before Miss Rivera noticed the shift in my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. My heart was pounding too hard, my mind racing with possibilities. A breach, a lawsuit, another attack from a direction I didn't see coming. With everything that had just unfolded with my family, the idea of a second crisis felt almost cruel. But Apex wasn't just a business. It was a living organism that pulsed with responsibility. 50 employees depending on me, secure data that needed constant protection, a federal contract with zero tolerance for error. I couldn't afford a single misstep. I stepped away from the courthouse steps, pressed my back against a cold stone pillar, and dialed my head of operations. He picked up on the first ring. "Danielle?" His voice was tense. "I'm here. What's going on?" He took a breath. "2 federal auditors showed up unannounced. They said they're doing a rapid assessment check because of the bankruptcy filing." My blood froze. A rapid assessment? That only happens if there's a suspected breach or internal threat tied to company leadership. Exactly. My stomach twisted. Malcolm's little stunt. His forged documents, his lies. They triggered a federal review of my company. "Where are they now?" I asked. "In the main conference room. They're polite, professional, but what?" "They've requested all financial records from the last 2 years and full access to the internal audit logs.
IT is stalling until you authorize it. I closed my eyes. This wasn't a small check. This wasn't routine. This was the kind of assessment the DoD used when they suspected infiltration, sabotage, or misconduct. My voice came out low. Okay, I'm coming in. Miss Rivera stepped closer. What's happening? Federal audit, triggered by Malcolm's fraud filing. Her eyes widened. They think Apex might be compromised. I nodded. Do you need me with you? I shook my head. No, this part's my battlefield. She squeezed my hand. Then fight like you always do. I turned away and headed for the parking garage, weaving through reporters who were still swarming around the courthouse doors. Their questions echoed behind me, but I barely heard them over the roar in my ears. My family had already tried to break my spirit. Now their actions were threatening to break the foundation I'd built from dust and grit. As I reached my car, my phone vibrated again, this time with a text from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. They're looking into everything now. I stopped dead. My breath hitched, because that wasn't a random message. That was a threat. I gripped the phone tighter. The courthouse was behind me, the world was spinning, and my instincts, the same instincts that had sharpened after years in cybersecurity, screamed that this wasn't Malcolm. This was someone else. Someone who knew exactly what a federal audit could do to a company on the rise. Someone who wanted Apex to fall. I took a breath, forcing myself to analyze instead of panic. Unknown number, untraceable tone, intentional wording, a warning disguised as intimidation. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting. But I didn't run. I got in my car, started the engine, and headed straight to the office. The drive to Apex was a blur of red lights, honking horns, and the hum of my own heartbeat. My mind replayed every step of our recent success, every contract, every negotiation, every piece of code my engineers had poured their lives into. Apex wasn't a toy. It wasn't a side hustle. It was a cornerstone in national defense infrastructure. If someone outside my family was involved, if someone wanted us destabilized, this was bigger than betrayal. This was sabotage. When I finally pulled into our secure parking lot, 2 black government SUVs were already parked near the entrance. My employees huddled inside the lobby, whispering anxiously. The second I walked in, all conversation stopped. Danielle, said Marcus, my IT director, approaching me with an urgent expression. They've asked for direct access to the internal servers. Do you want us to comply? My pulse quickened. Compliance was required, but blindly handing over access was dangerous. Not yet, I said. I'll talk to them first. We headed toward the conference room. Through the glass wall, I saw the auditors, 2 stiff, expressionless men in dark suits, laptops open, badges displayed, posture stern. Before I entered, Marcus whispered, "They mentioned something unusual." I stopped. What? They said there were anomalies in our external traffic logs last night. My chest tightened. Anomalies? Ping attempts repeated from a masked endpoint. My mind raced. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't just fallout from Malcolm's fraud. Someone had tried to breach us. And the timing was too perfect. I straightened my blazer, forced my heartbeat to settle, and stepped into the conference room. Both auditors stood as I entered. Ms. Santos, we need to discuss the nature of the external activity identified last night. It appears someone attempted to access restricted files related to your DoD contract. Every muscle in my body tightened. Do you know who might have reason to target Apex? The second auditor asked. I thought of the text message, the threat, the precision, the timing. Someone wanted Apex vulnerable right when my family's betrayal made the company look shaky. I might, I said quietly, but I think you're going to need to see something first. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Because 10 minutes ago, I received this. I placed the threatening text on the table. The auditors leaned in, their expressions shifting from neutral to alert. One of them tapped his pen. Miss Santos, this changes the nature of our investigation. A chill rippled through me. How? I asked. He looked up with eyes that told me the danger was far deeper than I imagined. Because this isn't just fraud. This message suggests active interference with a federal defense contractor. He paused. And that means someone dangerous has targeted you directly. My breath caught. And suddenly, the courtroom wasn't the battleground anymore. My family wasn't the only threat. Something darker was unfolding, and I was standing at the center of it.
Malcolm Carter had always moved through life as though the world were upholstered just for him, soft, accommodating, tailored to his stride. For 37 years, every mistake he made was quietly scrubbed clean by Harold's influence, Denise's excuses, or Janelle's diversions. When he crashed a Mercedes at 20, boys will be boys. When he siphoned dealership funds for his crypto phase, he's just finding himself. When he sabotaged another manager to secure his position, he's showing initiative. But the federal government was not his parents, and Judge Holloway certainly wasn't. The moment the gavel fell and the courtroom erupted into murmurs, something broke in Malcolm's expression. Not guilt, not remorse, but the realization that he had finally crossed a line no one could pull him back from. The line where his last name meant nothing. He was still frozen in place when the federal agents approached Judge Holloway for instructions. Danielle didn't wait to see the rest. She had already turned toward the exit, her heels clicking with a rhythm far steadier than her heartbeat. Freedom sometimes sounded like footsteps leaving a place you never should have been dragged into. The investigation moved fast, faster than any Carter had expected. Bankruptcy fraud. Perjury. Forgery of financial documents, attempting to interfere with a government defense contractor, potential national security endangerment. Danielle sat through the hearings only when subpoenaed. She answered questions professionally, emotionlessly. She didn't need vindication. The truth was doing all the work for her. Harold's ace grew grayer with every session. Denise's pearls trembled against her collarbone as she whispered frantic prayers. Janelle attended once, then vanished when she realized her social circle had begun gossiping. Malcolm, stripped of his attorney's bravado, looked small. For the first time in his life, there was no one to shield him. The plea deal came 3 months later. 3 years in minimum security. Probation for an additional 5. Permanent mark on all financial and government records. Harold paid for the best lawyers money could buy, but even they couldn't untangle Malcolm from federal offenses tied to defense contracts. It was over. The Tartar luxury dealership had always sold 3 things: cars, status, and the illusion that the family behind it was impeccable. With Malcolm convicted and Harold's involvement scrutinized, the illusion evaporated. Former employees leaked stories. Customers canceled orders. A viral article titled "Luxury on the Outside, Corruption on the Inside, the Carter Motor Scandal" finished the job. Harold stepped down temporarily, but everyone knew it was permanent. Denise tried to issue a statement claiming the family was devastated and blindsided. Danielle didn't read it. The first letter came from Denise. "We never meant for things to go this far. We were worried about you. Families make mistakes. Please don't abandon us." Danielle placed it unopened in her shredder. The second came from Janelle. "I had nothing to do with what Malcolm did. I've always admired how driven you are. I hope you won't hold the family's poor choices against me." Danielle's reply was short. "Support given in silence when it mattered is just complicity." Janelle never wrote again. Danielle tucked Eliana into bed that night, kissing her forehead gently. Her daughter blinked sleepily. "Mommy, are you happy today?" Danielle paused. Not because she wasn't, but because she finally realized she was. "Yes, baby," she whispered. "Very." The toxic weight of years, the dismissiveness, the gaslighting, and the quiet cruelty had finally lifted. The courtroom hadn't just been an ending, it had been a doorway she never realized she needed, and on the other side was the life she built herself. Apex Defense Systems thrived. Her team grew. Her influence in the defense tech world solidified. Her freedom from the Carters became absolute. Sometimes the only way out is through. Sometimes the only way forward is alone. And sometimes the family you lose is the blessing you never expected. The morning sun glinted off the glass facade of Apex Defense Systems' new headquarters, a 5-story monument to everything Danielle had built. Not for recognition, and certainly not for her family's approval, but for the soldiers relying on her technology, the employees who trusted her leadership, and the little girl at home who looked at her like she hung the stars. 8 years ago, this building would have felt impossible. Today, it felt earned. Inside, Apex hummed with disciplined intensity. Engineers clustered around whiteboards. Cybersecurity analysts reviewed incoming reports from various DoD task forces. A team of interns hurried down the hall carrying prototype equipment. The energy was focused, sharp, purposeful. Danielle stepped out of the elevator and the floor fell quiet for a beat, not out of fear, but respect. "Morning, Danielle. Good to see you, boss. Congrats on the new contract." They meant the $340 million expansion that had sent shockwaves through the defense tech community. It was the kind of deal that turned small innovators into major players, and it had solidified Apex as a cornerstone of modern U.S. cyber defense. But Danielle didn't slow to absorb the praise. She had a mission, one that had nothing to do with revenge. A team worth fighting for. Her CFO, Marlon Wen, intercepted her before she reached her office. "We got confirmation," Marla said, handing over a folder. "We're clear to begin Phase 2 next month." Danielle flipped through the documents, risk assessments, budget details, deployment schedules. Everything was meticulous. Marla was the kind of professional Danielle had once dreamed of hiring. "Perfect. Let's reward the engineering teams before the holidays. Bonuses across the board." Marla blinked. "Across the board? That's generous." They earned it. The Carter household had always treated loyalty as something owed, respect as something demanded, and people as something replaceable. Apex was the opposite. Here, people were valued. Here, excellence was recognized. Here, Danielle was finally living the leadership she'd never seen growing up. A visit from the DoD. An hour later, a pair of high-ranking DoD officials arrived for a scheduled meeting. Danielle guided them to the secure briefing room. They discussed new cyber warfare threats, evolving defense needs, and expansion opportunities across various branches of the military. One of the officials, Colonel James Rourke, leaned back, giving her an appraising look. "You've built something extraordinary here. And frankly, Carter," he corrected himself with a respectful nod, "Santos, you are one of the sharpest minds in this entire sector." Danielle didn't preen. She simply nodded, professional and composed. "Thank you, Colonel, but it's a team effort." He smiled. "Humility suits you, but don't let it hide your brilliance." She allowed herself the smallest smile, not for the compliment, but for the fact that she'd earned her place among giants without a shred of her family's influence. The shadow of the Carters. News of the Carter scandal still trickled through business networks, but it touched Danielle less and less. Harold had stepped down entirely from the dealership. Denise kept writing letters Danielle never opened. Malcolm had begun serving his sentence, stripped of the arrogance that once defined him. Janelle retreated into wealthy anonymity. The family that spent decades belittling Danielle now whispered her name with dread or resentment, never pride. But none of that mattered. She had walked away, and the distance grew a little wider every day.
That night, Danielle returned home to the quiet suburban house she'd chosen not for status, but for peace. Eliana sat cross-legged on the living room floor, building a tiny robot from a beginner's engineering kit. "Look, Mommy," her daughter said proudly, "it can follow light." Danielle kneeled, examining the carefully wired circuits. "You did all this by yourself?" Eliana nodded vigorously. "I want to build machines like you, big ones, important ones, ones that keep people safe." Danielle's chest tightened, not in pain, but in overwhelming, fragile pride. "You will, because you're smart and brave and kind, and because you're growing up knowing you can do anything." Eliana laughed, scooting closer. "Can I work at Apex one day?" Danielle brushed a curl from her daughter's face. "You can run Apex one day." And she meant it. After Eliana went to bed, Danielle stood on the back porch looking up at the stars. The crisp December air bit gently at her skin. The world felt still, grounded, whole. Her family had once mocked her for playing with electronics. Now her technology protected the country. They had tried to frame her as irresponsible and incompetent. Now she was leading one of the fastest-growing defense firms in the nation. They had tried to destroy her financially, emotionally, professionally. Instead, they revealed exactly why she'd succeeded. Because she learned to thrive without their approval, without their money, without their limitations. Danielle took a slow breath, letting it out like a final release. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need reconciliation. She needed exactly what she had now: her work, her daughter, her freedom. And in that moment, beneath the quiet night sky, Danielle realized,
I woke up before dawn. The kind of morning where the sky felt heavy, like it was carrying a secret. For weeks, I'd tried to outrun the aftermath of the courtroom, bury myself in work, in Eliana, in the peace I'd carved out. But healing isn't linear, and some wounds don't disappear just because you've learned how to live above them. Some linger, waiting for the right moment to reopen. That moment arrived at 6:14 a.m. when my phone buzzed with a number I recognized but didn't want to see. The federal investigator assigned to Malcolm's case. "Mrs. Santos," he said when I answered, his tone calm but firm. "We have an update regarding your brother's plea agreement. You may want to sit down." My stomach tightened. "I'm listening." He explained that Malcolm had violated the conditions of his agreement, attempting to intimidate a witness who worked at the printing shop where he forged the financial documents. He tried to convince the man to lose the work order records, promising him cash when he got out. The witness didn't budge. Instead, he called the investigator. "So what happens now?" I asked. "His attorney is negotiating, but the judge is considering revoking the deal entirely. He may serve the maximum." I didn't cheer. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't even feel relief. All I felt was a hollow ache, like grief for a person who was still alive but who had abandoned any version of himself worth saving. "Thank you for letting me know," I said quietly. After I hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. I thought of all the ways Malcolm could have chosen differently. Just one humble conversation, one moment of decency, one step toward accountability. Instead, he doubled down on manipulation, like it was the only language he knew. I had pulled myself out of poverty. He had pulled himself into prison. Eliana's small footsteps echoed from the hallway. She climbed into my lap, warm and soft, her hair smelling like lavender from last night's bath. "You okay, Morny?" I smoothed her curls. "Yeah, baby. Just thinking." She pressed her cheek against me. "Thinking good things or hard things?" I smiled faintly. "A little of both." Later that morning, I drove to Apex, trying to shake the heaviness. But as soon as I stepped off the elevator onto the executive floor, I sensed something was off. My assistant, Lacey, looked nervous. "Your mother is here," she whispered.
My entire body tensed. Where? In your office. She said she wouldn't leave until she saw you. I'm sorry, It's fine, I said, though nothing about this situation was fine. When I opened my office door, Denise Carter stood by the window, dressed in her usual flawless beige suit, her posture a perfect sculpture of controlled elegance. But her eyes were tired, swollen at the edges like she'd cried recently. That alone felt foreign. Danielle, she breathed, hands trembling. Thank God. Why are you here? I asked, staying near the doorway. I needed to speak with you, in person. You won't read my letters. Correct. She flinched. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick, filled with old resentments and unspoken truths. She took a step forward, clutching her purse like a life raft. I didn't know Malcolm would take it this far, she whispered. Mom? I said sharply. You sat behind him in that courtroom, proud. Her jaw tightened. Shame flickered across her face. Your father and I thought you were exaggerating, that you were trying to make yourself look more successful than what? Than the failure you raised me to believe I was? Her voice cracked. No, baby, that's not... Don't call me that. Her breath stuttered. She stepped back like I'd slapped her. I came to apologize, she said, voice shaking. I came because your brother might go away for a long time, and your father is falling apart, and... Stop. I raised a hand. Just stop. Tears filled her eyes. We were wrong about you, all this time. We were wrong. And we're losing everything. And you want... what? Forgiveness? Comfort? Access to my life now that your world is collapsing? She covered her mouth, holding in a sob. No, she whispered. I just want my daughter back. I felt something inside me tilt, not with empathy, but with clarity. You never had me. You had the version of me you created to make yourselves feel superior. The quiet, obedient, small Danielle. And when I outgrew that version, you rejected me. You mocked me. You believed lies about me because they fit the narrative you liked. Her tears spilled over. I'm begging you, she whispered, voice thin. We're still family. I stared at her for a long moment. Family is what you protect, not what you sacrifice to save face. She let out a sound, half cry, half gasp. Please, she murmured, please don't shut me out. I stepped toward her, not close, but close enough that she could see the conviction in my eyes. I already did. Then I opened the door and waited. Denise Carter, the woman who once commanded rooms like royalty, walked past me with shoulders hunched, like someone leaving a funeral. She didn't look back. I closed the door and leaned against it, my pulse pounding with anger, grief, and an unexpected grief-tinged pity. But relief? No, not yet. Healing never arrives on command. It creeps in slowly, like dawnlight. Hours later, when I finally made it home, Eliana ran to me with a drawing she had made, the two of us holding hands in front of a tall building labeled Apex, both smiling. I knelt, taking the picture. What's this for? I asked. So you don't forget, she said matter-of-factly. You already have the family you need. I kissed her forehead, my throat too tight to speak. But inside, something shifted. Just a little. A fracture in the old hurt. And that's when it hit me. The people who raised me may never understand me, but the child I'm raising will grow up knowing exactly who she is, because I know exactly who I am. And I intend to keep it that way.
I thought my mother's visit would be the emotional peak of the week, but life has a way of saving the hardest blows for the moments when you think you're finally catching your breath. 2 days after Denise walked out of my office with her shoulders crumpled and her pride shattered, I sat in a meeting with my executive team reviewing our latest defense system prototype, an AI-driven intrusion detection platform capable of isolating foreign cyber threats in under 3 seconds. It was brilliant work, groundbreaking even, and yet I could barely focus because my phone, face down beside my notebook, kept vibrating over and over. Same number, unknown, but local. After the fourth vibration, Marla gave me the slightest nod, permission to step out. I took it. In the hallway, I answered sharply. "This is Danielle." A trembling voice responded. "Miss Santos, this is Officer Reynolds from the Ashwood Detention Center." Every muscle in my body went rigid. "Is this about Malcolm?" "Yes, ma'am." His voice was careful, almost gentle. "There's been an incident." My breath came short and shallow. "What happened?" "Your brother was assaulted by another inmate early this morning. He sustained injuries. He's stable, but we needed to notify you since you're listed as the emergency contact." I closed my eyes, leaning against the cool wall. Emergency contact. Of course. My parents always handed responsibility to me when things went wrong, even after all they'd done. "Is he conscious?" I asked. "Yes, but the medical team they're keeping a close watch." I swallowed hard. Anger surged first. He put himself here. Then something else slid in beneath it. An echo of the girl I used to be. The sister who once defended Malcolm in middle school when he got in trouble for stealing sneakers. The teenager who helped him study for algebra he never thanked me for. The young woman who kept hoping he'd become someone better. That girl still lived inside me, even if she didn't make decisions anymore. "I'll come by this afternoon," I said finally. "Just to be clear, this doesn't change anything legally or personally." "I understand," he replied softly. When I returned to the conference room, my team froze when they saw my expression. "Everything okay?" Marla asked. "Yes," I said, "but I need to step away for the rest of the day. Continue without me." They nodded, offering silent support. Apex would run smoothly. I had built it to. The real storm was elsewhere. By the time I reached the detention center, the winter sun was hanging low, casting long shadows across the parking lot. The walk inside felt surreal. Metal detectors, cold fluorescent lights, the low hum of voices behind glass partitions. A guard led me to the infirmary wing. When the door opened, I saw Malcolm lying on a narrow bed, his face swollen on one side, his arm in a sling, a deep bruise blooming across his jaw. He looked small, diminished. Not the arrogant man who had stood in court smirking as he tried to ruin me. When his eyes flicked open and landed on me, a wave of conflicting emotions crossed his face. Shock, shame, anger, something like regret, then finally a weary resignation. "You came," he rasped, "for information, not for you." He let out a strangled laugh that turned into a cough. "Still cold as ice, huh?" "No, I'm healthy. That's not the same thing." Silence stretched between us until he looked away, staring at the floor like it held some answer he'd lost. "They jumped me," he muttered. "Some guys who heard about the case said I was stupid for messing with a government contractor. Said people like me made time harder for everybody. I didn't know whether to feel sympathy or say nothing. I chose the truth. You were stupid, and reckless, and selfish, and you put our whole family in danger. You put me in danger." His chin trembled. He blinked fast, like he didn't want me to see. "Didn't think it would get this bad," he whispered. "That's the problem, Malcolm. You never think. You just take." He winced as though my words hurt worse than the bruises. "I thought if I could knock you down a peg, Dad would
I don't know, look at me the way he looks at you now. That stung in a way I didn't expect. You were already the golden child, I said. You always were. Not anymore, he murmured, voice cracking. Now I'm the embarrassment, the criminal, the failure. A flicker of something human, raw, wounded, boyish crossed his features, and for a moment I saw the little brother I used to carry on my shoulders at the park, the boy who cried when he fell off his bike and scraped his knee, the teenager who helped him study for algebra he never thanked me for, the young woman who kept hoping he'd become someone better. But that boy was long gone. Malcolm looked at me with eyes full of desperation. Danielle, please, tell them I forgive me. Tell the judge I didn't mean... No, I said instantly. I will not lie. Not for you. Not for anyone. His face crumpled. Then help me. Please. You're the only one who can. I stepped back. No, Malcolm. I'm the one you tried to destroy, and you're here because of choices you made. His eyes reddened, filling with tears he refused to shed. As I walked toward the door, he called out, voice breaking, Am I really that far gone to you? I turned, my hand on the metal frame. You did that to yourself, and I'm done paying the price for it. The guard opened the door. I stepped out, but his voice followed me like a shadow. Danielle, I'm sorry. For the first time in my life, I didn't turn back, not out of cruelty, but because I finally understood that forgiveness without change is just permission for repeat harm. When I got home that night, I stood at Eliana's bedroom doorway watching her sleep. Soft breaths, little hand curled around a stuffed bear, peaceful, protected, loved in all the ways I never was. And as I looked at her tiny, trusting face, I felt an overwhelming clarity settle inside me. I would break every generational curse before it touched her. But as I closed her door quietly, a chill ran down my spine. Because something told me the Carters weren't done with me. Not yet. And when the past refuses to stay buried, it tends to crawl out in the dark.
I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. My mind kept replaying the sound of Malcolm's voice, broken, wavering, desperate. It wasn't guilt I felt, not sympathy, just unease, a warning in my bones that danger wasn't done circling me. And when I finally drifted into a shallow doze around 5 a.m., I woke an hour later to the sharp ping of an email alert from my security director at Apex. I sat up instantly. The message was short, clipped, and alarming. Danielle, we detected an unauthorized login attempt at 3:17 a.m. Origin appears to be a private residence in Northgate Estates. Coordinates attached. You need to see this. My pulse kicked into overdrive. Northgate Estates. That was nowhere near the detention center. But it was frighteningly close to one person I hadn't heard from in months. Janelle. My phone buzzed again. Marla calling too early for anything routine. I answered. What's going on? You saw the email? Yes. She exhaled shakily. That location, that's your parents' neighborhood. My stomach dropped. Danielle, she continued, the credentials used in the breach attempt were yours. I stopped breathing. What do you mean, mine? Your old Apex login, the one you used before you upgraded to biometric-only access. It was disabled and archived, but someone tried to resurrect it. Cold washed over me. Someone in my family had tried to access classified military tech,
Someone connected to Malcolm's crimes? Someone desperate. Are we compromised? I managed. No, Marla said. The system caught the attempt before it got anywhere. But we need to see the security footage we have, and we need to notify the DOD. I hung up, hands trembling. My throat felt tight, a painful squeeze of dread. I walked to the kitchen, gripping the counter to steady myself. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies racing thoughts. Who in my family would be reckless enough to touch government systems? I didn't want the answer, but deep down, I already knew. At 7 a.m., I dropped Ileana at school, forcing myself to smile, to hug her tight, and to pretend everything was normal. She didn't need to feel the storm forming around us. That was my job, to shield her from every broken piece of the world that tried to hurt me. I arrived at Apex just after 7:30. Marla, my head of security, and 2 DOD liaisons were waiting in my office with grim expressions. We pulled the video from the attempted login source address, my security director said, clicking a file on the screen. The footage was grainy, nighttime camera, wide-angle lens, but crystal clear where it mattered. Janelle, my older sister, the one who married into wealth, the one who never worked a day in her life, the one who looked at me with contempt when I was living on ramen, the one who said I was embarrassing the Carters with my little science hobby. She was the one trying to breach my system. I pressed a hand to my forehead. Lord. She tried 3 times, Marla said. Each failure triggered another security alert. She wasn't subtle. A DOD liaison stepped forward, voice stern. Miss Santos, this is a serious offense. Attempting to access classified systems is a federal crime, whether she succeeded or not. Yes, I whispered, throat thick. I know. My heart thudded painfully, because I also knew why Janelle did it. Money. She saw the dealership collapsing, Harold's finances cracking, Malcolm facing years in prison, the Carter family legacy slipping through their fingers. And in their minds, I wasn't family. I was a resource, something to exploit, something to take from. Even now. Do you want us to pursue charges? The liaison asked. My chest constricted. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was ugly. I need time, I said finally. Let me think before we escalate. The DOD officials nodded, though I could sense their concern. They left, giving me space. No sooner had the door closed than Marla turned to me, arms folded. Danielle, I need to say this as your friend, not your CFO. I looked up exhausted. Go ahead. This isn't going to stop on its own. I know. You can't heal in peace while your family is actively undermining your work. I know. And you can't keep giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not, I breathed. I'm just tired, Marla. I'm tired of being the only sane person in a family built on delusion. She softened. You don't owe them protection. Her words hit me hard. Because that's exactly what I'd been doing, protecting them, turning away, giving space, hoping silence would create distance. But silence just created opportunity for them to sink further. A knock interrupted us. Lacey poked her head in, eyes wide. Danielle, your father is in the lobby. He says it's an emergency. My whole body went cold. Does he know I'm here? He does.
He insists he needs to speak to you. I exhaled shakily. Tell him he has 5 minutes. When I stepped into the lobby, Harold stood there looking older than I'd ever seen him. His tailored coat couldn't hide the slumped posture or the dark circles under his eyes. Danielle, he said, voice hoarse. I need your help. Not, hello, not, how are you doing? Just need. What now? I asked flatly. It's your sister, he said. She made a terrible mistake. The police came by our house this morning. They said she might be under investigation for something involving your company. She is, I said. His face twisted. Please, they'll arrest her. I'm begging you, fix this, quietly, before it ruins her. Something in me snapped, quietly, cleanly. Ruins her, I repeated. She tried to hack into a government contractor's classified systems. She could have jeopardized national security. She didn't understand what she was doing, he argued. She was desperate. I stepped closer, voice low and sharp. Do you know what's truly desperate? Spending years eating dollar store ramen while building a company from scratch? Surviving your own parents telling you you're a failure every holiday? Watching your siblings get handed luxury while you're belittled for dreaming too big? He flinched. You want to talk about ruin? I survived mine. Janelle created hers. Danielle. His voice broke. She's your sister. No, I said, steady and final. Sisters don't sabotage your work. Sisters don't side with your abusers. Sisters don't commit federal crimes to steal from you. Harold's composure cracked. His lips trembled. His eyes watered, not from remorse, but from fear. Please, don't let them take her. I stared at him, feeling something inside me calcify. The DOD will decide, not me. He sank into a chair, head in his hands, and all I felt was cold, weary clarity. My family wasn't spiraling. They'd already crashed. Now they were clawing at me, hoping I'd break the fall. But I'd built myself too high and too strong for their collapse to drag me down again. As I walked back towards the elevators, my phone buzzed. A text message. But the message made my blood run cold. You think cutting ties will stop us? You have no idea what's coming. I froze. Because this wasn't Malcolm. This wasn't Harold. This wasn't Denise. This was someone else. Someone watching. Someone listening. Someone who had just declared war.
The winter sun was already fading when Danielle stepped out of the Apex headquarters, the air sharp enough to sting her cheeks. She pulled her coat tighter, listening to the steady hum of the city, a sound she used to associate with loneliness, now with possibility. A black SUV rolled to the curb, and her head of operations, Priya Raman, jumped out, tablet in hand. We got it, Priya said, breathless. The NATO cybersecurity directive. They want Apex to lead the joint infrastructure overhaul. Danielle paused. You're kidding. Priya shook her head, smiling wide. They said your testimony before the Armed Services Committee sealed it. You impressed people, Danny. For a heartbeat, Danielle couldn't speak. The hearing had been intimidating, a room full of decorated generals and stone-faced advisors. She had been grilled on threat vectors, classified protocols, and data integrity under foreign pressure. Every ounce of doubt she had carried from childhood sat on her shoulders that day.
She still remembered glancing at the gallery, half expecting to find her family there, arms crossed, waiting for her to fail. But they weren't. They never would be. She blinked back to the present. "So what's the timeline?" she asked. "Immediate," Priya said. "They want a preliminary framework in 2 weeks." Danielle laughed softly. 2 weeks? They're trying to kill us." Priya grinned. Nothing new. They rode up to the executive floor, where her team had gathered for an after-hours briefing. Laptops glowed, coffee cups littered every table, and energy buzzed through the room. These were the people who believed in her, not out of obligation, but out of respect. "All right, everyone," Danielle said as she stepped inside. The room hushed. "New development. NATO wants us to lead their cyber infrastructure overhaul." A ripple of shock, then excitement. "Wait, lead?" someone muttered. "As in main contractor?" another asked. Danielle nodded. "Yes, Apex is taking point." Applause erupted. Chairs scraped. A few team members shouted in disbelief. Danielle lifted a hand for quiet. "This is going to be the hardest thing we've ever done. But if anyone can pull this off, it's this team. We start planning tonight, volunteer only for the late shift." Every hand went up. Danielle inhaled slowly, emotion tightening her chest. She had a family after all, just not the one she was born into. Later that night, after the planning session wound down, she returned to her office. The city lights glimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She picked up a framed photograph of baby Eliana, fat-cheeked and giggling, frosting smeared across her face from her first birthday cake. She smiled softly. "Everything is for you." Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I heard about the NATO project. I know you don't want to see us again. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. I always was. I didn't know how to show it." Danielle stared at the message. Once it would have cracked her, once she would have folded under the longing for approval she had chased for years. Now it only felt distant, irrelevant. She deleted the message without replying. She had already learned the truth. Her worth didn't live in people who ignored her. It lived in the work she built, the people she trusted, and the child she loved. She turned off the office lights and headed home, not burdened by the past, but walking firmly into the future she made with her own hands.
The next morning began before sunrise. Danielle tiptoed into Eliana's room, where soft, golden light from the hallway brushed across tiny curls and a plush fox clutched under one arm. Eliana blinked awake, smiling sleepily. "Mama," she murmured. Danielle scooped her up, inhaling the warm scent of lavender shampoo. "Good morning, Starshine." As she carried her daughter to the kitchen, her mind flickered to last night's deleted message. She felt no regret, only clarity. The doors she had closed were the ones that needed closing. While Eliana munched on banana slices, Danielle checked her email. DoD updates, NATO scheduling, a briefing request from the White House task force. A lifetime ago, she couldn't get her father to take her interest in cybersecurity seriously. Now world governments wanted her at the table. She almost laughed at the surrealness of it. But beneath the whirlwind of contracts and strategy, a deeper thought emerged. For the first time in years, her life felt settled. Not simple, never simple, but anchored. After dropping Eliana at preschool, Danielle arrived at headquarters to find Priya pacing outside her office, concerned. "What's wrong?" Danielle asked immediately. Priya handed her a tablet. "Media request." Danielle frowned. "We get those daily." "Not like this." On the screen was a headline mock-up from a major international network. "A request for a televised feature. Investigative documentary style." Danielle's stomach tightened. "No, absolutely not." "I thought you'd say that," Priya said gently, "but they already caught wind of the bankruptcy case, Malcolm's indictment, your family's involvement. Someone leaked it."
Danielle closed her eyes. It wasn't the scrutiny she feared. She could weather that. It was the idea that Eliana might someday read headlines framing Danielle's success around the people who tried to destroy her instead of the people who helped her build. "So, the story's happening with or without us?" she asked. "Most likely," Priya admitted. "You can either let them control the narrative, or you can." A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Danielle exhaled. "If I agree, the story stays focused on Apex, on cyber defense, on the work. No family tragedy dramatization, no manufactured tears." Priya smirked. "You've met reporters, right?" Danielle ran a hand through her hair. "Fine, then we shape it as best we can. Set boundaries, no exploitation, and absolutely no mention of Eliana." "Of course," Priya said. An hour later, Danielle sat across from a producer via secure video call. The woman was calm, well-prepared, and surprisingly respectful. "We are interested in your innovations, but people also want to understand who you are, not just what you build." Danielle gave a small, professional smile. "If they understand the work, they will understand me." To her surprise, the producer nodded. "Then that's where we start." The interview date was set. After the meeting, Danielle stepped outside onto the rooftop terrace, breathing in the cold December air. She remembered being a teenager soldering circuit boards in her bedroom, mocked for having no real ambition. She remembered crying in a dorm hallway when her father told her engineering was a man's field. She remembered the bankruptcy summons crushing her chest, thinking her family might actually succeed in ruining everything. But she also remembered building Apex piece by piece. The hours, the failures, the breakthroughs, the mentors who saw her potential, the employees who trusted her leadership, the massive leap she took when she thought she was still small. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "Boss?" It was Raphael, her lead engineer, the first employee she ever hired. "You okay?" he asked. Danielle nodded slowly. "Just thinking." Raphael leaned on the railing beside her. "You know, for years you kept your head down, let the world underestimate you. That's over now." She gave a quiet laugh. "Feels strange." "It's not strange. It's overdue." Danielle looked over the sprawling city, the sky tinged with winter silver. For the first time, she wasn't bracing for attack. She wasn't shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. She was simply standing tall. She headed back inside. She had a company to run, a global infrastructure to fortify, a child to raise with honesty and strength. Her past could whisper all it wanted, but it no longer had the power to shape her future. The studio lights were warmer than Danielle expected, soft, golden, almost forgiving. She sat in the center of a minimalist set, cameras arranged like quiet observers. The producer had kept her promise. No dramatic music, no exploitative angles, no cheap shots. Still, every instinct in Danielle's body pulsed with the memory of the courtroom, the betrayal, the years of biting her tongue because her own family insisted her ambition was an embarrassment. "Rolling," someone called. The room stilled. The interviewer, a calm woman with kind eyes, offered a small nod. "Danielle, what made you start Apex Defense Systems?" Danielle inhaled slowly. "Necessity," she answered. "And defiance." A pause. "Defiance of what?" "My limitations, or the limitations other people tried to put on me." As she spoke, memories flickered like scenes on a dim projector. Her father shrugging when she showed him her first working prototype. Malcolm joking that she should stop pretending to be smart. Janelle rolling her eyes when Danielle explained why cybersecurity mattered. "I built Apex because I believed we deserved better technology protecting our country, and because I needed to build something that was mine, something no one could take away." The interviewer didn't push. She simply let the word sit,
letting Danielle choose what came next. Your bankruptcy case made headlines. Is there anything you want to clarify? Danielle's chest tightened, but she didn't flinch. Yes, she said steadily. I want people to know the case wasn't a business failure. It wasn't mismanagement. It wasn't debt. It was fraud, committed by someone who happened to be my brother. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't crack. It simply carried the truth. And I want to say this clearly. Family titles don't excuse criminal actions. Love does not require silence, and success shouldn't make you a target. Behind the crew, the producer's eyebrows lifted, a silent nod of respect. The interview moved to technology, global threats, the future of cybersecurity. Danielle relaxed into her expertise, tracing the evolution of Apex from garage to government-level innovator. Her voice came alive when she spoke about her engineers, the breakthroughs they'd made, and the responsibility they bore. But the final question brought everything to a standstill. What do you hope your legacy will be? The interviewer asked. Danielle paused. In her mind, she saw Eliana, small hands gripping a pink crown, drawing impossible worlds with absolute belief. She saw herself at 12, tinkering with wires in secret because her father called her hobby a waste of time. She saw the woman she became, forged not in her family's approval, but in the fire of their dismissal. My legacy? I want my daughter, and every girl who watches this, to know that people don't have to believe in your dream for it to be real. Their disbelief is not your destiny. Her throat tightened. And I want to say this clearly. I built Apex because I believed we deserved better technology protecting our country. A quiet hush draped the room. A sound engineer wiped his eye. Even the interviewer seemed moved. That's beautiful, she whispered. When the cameras cut, Danielle exhaled, her chest loosening as if she'd unstrapped a weight she'd worn since childhood. You did incredible, the producer said. We'll send you the final cut before it airs. Danielle thanked her, grabbed her coat, and stepped outside. The winter air rushed against her cheeks, sharp and cleansing. She felt lighter than she had in years. Her phone buzzed. A picture from the preschool teacher. Eliana at a tiny table, proudly building a toy block tower, smile wide, curls bouncing. Danielle smiled. That's my girl. She drove straight there, arriving just as Eliana ran out the door, yelling, Mama! Danielle lifted her daughter high into the cold December air. Hi, baby, she whispered, kissing her forehead. As they walked hand in hand to the car, Danielle felt something settle in her chest. Not anger, not grief, not leftover bake. Something quieter. Something freeing. Peace. True peace. Later that night, after Eliana fell asleep, Danielle stood in the doorway of her daughter's room, soft lamplight haloing the small sleeping form. She whispered a promise she hoped would anchor itself into their shared future. You will never have to earn my belief the way I had to earn theirs. A notification lit her phone. A news alert. Malcolm's face appeared beneath the headline. Danielle watched it for a long moment. Then, calmly, she locked her phone and turned out the light. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vengeance, no twisted thrill. She had already finished grieving the family she never truly had. The justice system could take it from here. In bed, she wrapped herself in warm blankets, staring out the large window overlooking the moonlit city. The city she built her empire in. The city she once wandered alone with a backpack and fear, and nothing but an idea. They had tried to bury her. They forgot she was a seed. A soft smile touched her lips. She made it. On her own terms. On her own name. And tomorrow she'd wake up and do it all again, for herself, for her team, and for the little girl who would grow up never doubting her own brilliance. If they had intended the courtroom to be her end, they didn't understand her at all.
It was her beginning. If you learned something new from my life story, please like this video, subscribe to join our community for more stories like mine, and comment down below where you're watching this video from. I'd truly love to know.